Start. Okay, it's started again. Okay. Now that in the previous recording we have kind of laid out the foundation that there was an event that took place on August 25th, and that we agree more or less on the narrative of facts, right? That certain events took place, and we agree on the facts. Um, Now,
Correct.
I'd like to kind of um, start with in your opinion, are you an American? Are you born in America?
I am.
Okay. So am I.
Yes.
So I want to start with I guess just to get out of the way is what is your opinion what free speech and free expression is?
Um, that's a sort of a difficult question to answer. I honestly believe it is a freedom to have any opinion, to express any opinion, to publish opinions, to feel any way you want to feel about any issue without fear of government reprisal for those actions.
Okay.
I think that people should be able to say what they want to say. Now, if that speech causes harm, I think that there's accountability for that harm. The standard model of yelling fire in a crowded theater, creating a stampede, that type of thing. I think that that's relevant.
Absolutely.
I think that unpopular speech may be subject to public disapproval. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that being called out for what may be an abhorrent opinion to some is not stifling free speech, but just further expression of it.
So with the fire thing, right? We both agree that inciting a false panic is not protected free speech.
Correct.
Say again. I think you cut out.
I would say that that's correct.
Okay. So I agree with you 100% on that. Do you think that free speech should cover that is not free speech is not just a limitation upon the government, but also should extend in a way to limitations on private individuals, just like the one we just discussed about inciting a false panic. Because I personally believe that free speech not only does apply to restrictions of the government, but it does actually apply to restrictions of the private individual. But what do you think about that?
I think that I would want a definition of restriction. I think that that's. I think your point is interesting. I see what you're coming from.
Right.
I don't know what kind of restrictions on individual free speech you're referring to. If you give me an example, I could be specific.
Okay. So YouTube doesn't allow this word, but let's say that a man walks down the street with the sign "I hate gamers," right? Or "I hate cis white males." Should the government, right? Should the government have duty, or should a individual, right, who takes offense with said man walking down the street with a billboard that says "I hate straight white males," um, should the government, does the individual, and this is the fundamental question, if a person walks down the street with a billboard that says "I hate straight white males," and a straight white male comes up and says, "Good sir, I take issue with your opinion that you have on a billboard, and I am in layman terms going to fuck you up." And this straight white male then fucks up person with, or even a gang of straight white males fucks up this person with this billboard on their chest, right? And the
Okay.
question is my fundamental question is, does does freedom of speech cover cover in anger inciting speech? That's my question.
The person with the billboard, has every right to have that billboard, to carry that billboard, to have those opinions, to do as he wishes with it. The government has no business stepping in, telling him that he can or cannot have that. Maybe they can say, well, you can't do that in this, park or what, I don't know, whatever the local statutes are, but
Right.
they cannot stop him from having that opinion. The person that walks up to him and says, I take issue with your billboard, is well within his rights to take issue. They could have a debate back and forth. It could be spirited. It could be argumentative. They could even go so far as to say mean things about the other person. Your scenario only becomes a problem when the assault
The
happens.
assault happened. So you would agree that that the private individual has no duty to censor themselves. The private individual has every duty to censor their violent speech, right? You have duty to censor your violent speech. You have no duty whatsoever to censor your nonviolent speech.
Correct.
Okay, awesome.
Now, that's duty as a requirement. There are also some societal norms, like maybe it's not a good idea to say these things publicly to anger people in that way. Maybe it doesn't
That's
actually
right.
add to a good society, and you have a moral choice to make in there. But we're talking about rights,
Right.
not what is right.
Right. Yeah. So obviously, if that individual were to get fucked up by a gang of straight white males, I'm certainly not going to deny that. Hey, he brought it on himself, but I am going to say that he did nothing wrong. The gang of straight white males who fucked him up and committed an act of violence in response to nonviolent speech. Right. They did wrong. Right. Returning and this is my philosophy.
Agreed?
Reciprocating violent speech as a reaction to nonviolent speech is wrong, and that an individual, whether it be a private individual or a gang of private individuals, has duty to not return violent speech with, nonviolent speech with violent speech. Okay. I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing all this with me. I really do, because a lot of people, when I listen to podcasts and when I listen to kind of arguments, they never establish facts, and they never establish the deeper concepts that they're actually talking about. So I really appreciate you walking through this with me. I don't know if it might seem like a waste of
I
time.
think I think it's really interesting, and I'm glad that you're doing it. I think there needs to be more of this.
Yeah, yeah,
I always look at that from my side as I wish there were more people in the podcasts I listen to that are doing this, but I'm glad to see that it's being done in this opposite direction, and then
yeah.
I
Because
will give as good faith of a response as I can.
absolutely, I appreciate that. Because what ends up happening is two people end up in a discussion or an argument, and I'm listening to them. I'm like, these two people are working off different definitions of subcon of the like a complex issue will have these sub concepts, right? And they're working off different definitions, and so it just becomes a mess. Um, okay, so okay. So I don't know. You sound like a busy guy. You sound like you have a career. I don't know if you're aware of this internet drama. But this does relate to free speech. I'm not going off on a tangent. Um, do you know who Boogie 2988 is? You ever heard of him?
No,
So
no.
Boogie 2988 was he's declined in popularity. Was a very popular kind of personal blog YouTuber. He was a very over. He is still a very overweight male. And he was kind of the real first fat YouTuber, right? And he was very popular for a while. He's declined in popularity, and he got into a Twitter argument with a gentleman named Frank Hassel, not Castle. Hassle as in I'm hassling you. That got me very confused, because every time I looked up this guy, I was like, Frank Castle, the Punisher? No, it's actually Frank Hassel, like hassle. I'm hassling a person. Hassle. This individual, Frank Hassel, is known for hassling people, right? So think of like a 4chan troll, right? Except in real life, and he'll go into a private business and shout, "I need to take a shit" at the top of his lungs, right? And his posse will record him doing this, and then the manager will come in and say, "Get the fuck out," and he'll leave, and then he'll post his stuff on YouTube, get lots of views, lots of likes, He got banned off of YouTube and went somewhere else. But anyway, the point is that him, right? I'm explaining the context. Um, Boogie 2988 and Frank Hassel got into some sort of Twitter spat, and the Twitter spat, one thing led to another, and Boogie did something that, and this is my opinion, not the smartest thing, but I believe within his constitutional rights. He he invited a fight, right? He provoked a fight, and he said to Frank Castle, "Come on over to my house, see what happens." Blah blah blah, right? He's provoking, he's inciting a fight, and then so Frank Castle. Apparently, Boogie lives maybe in Arkansas or somewhere in Kansas, and Frank Castle had a friend in Arkansas or Kansas. So Frank Castle took him up on his offer and went to go see his friend in Kansas, right? And was posted on Twitter, "Hey Boogie, I'm here, you fat piece of shit." And Boogie continued to incite, and so finally Frank Castle got Boogie's address, knocked on the door, started screaming at him through the door, and Boogie again made another big mistake. Not only did he provoke the fight, but he opened his fucking door and tried to confront Frank Castle, and he did it with a firearm, right? And then Boogie's third mistake, he fired a warning shot, but it was a live round, and he fired it up in the air in the middle of suburbia, right? So ultimately, Frank Castle basically backed down and walked away. Not, of course, spewing a whole bunch of insults and slurs and shit like that. And Boogie is being charged with aggravated assault. I doubt the charges will stick, but I think he either just got bailed out or he's still in jail right now. And this is current. As of like 2 days ago. So what's the point that I'm getting toward? I want to ask you, now that I've explained the context of the situation, do you believe that it is protected speech to provoke or incite a fight, right? I believe it is, right? A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I believe it is. What's your opinion?
I, it's an extremely tricky issue, and I think my personal opinion would be letting case law and precedent make that decision. As I look at it, I think there's a difference between sort of anonymous internet commentary and him saying on Twitter, "Come and find me,"
Yeah.
is not the same as standing in front of a person and say, "Let's go." I do think that it's a threat.
He totally provokes everything, right? He's not as
No,
smart
it's
man.
absolutely a threat. So no, absolutely. He is. But we're talking about the free speech aspect of this. Of
Yes.
course, he provoked this. He's bringing this on himself.
Yes.
Is it a free speech issue? Where does his free speech? I don't know. I think it's too tricky. I do think that how this plays out in the courts is for experts, and in my personal opinion is this guy sounds like he provoked it, and having somebody show up at his door.
If you
it seems to be both sides here.
If you disagree, that's 100% fine, but it's good to know that we disagree, because it's important not only to know where we agree, but also the lines in which we disagree.
Well, I guess I don't know that we disagree, because I don't really know the free speech argument you're saying. Right. So you're saying that he is protected free speech for making his threat. He's protected free speech for opening the door and for all of that, and that the warning shot and the any criminal offense for firing a gun in suburbia, all of that should get thrown away because he was well within his rights to do all of those things.
No. He was 100% wrong firing a warning shot in the middle of suburbia. Absolutely wrong, and that's what he's being charged with: aggravated assault. I don't think.
Sure. So that charge is reasonable.
He's guilty of sin, but I think he should get a fine. As long as if the bullet landed somewhere, and it broke somebody's stuff, have him pay restitution, have him pay a big fine for the bullet. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's just going to get pleaded down into nothing. He'll pay a big fine, and that'll be it. But yeah, the warning shot ultimately, I think you and I can agree that firing guns in suburbia, negligent discharges like that, are just bad news.
I guess I just don't see any point in the the scenario here where free speech comes into play. It seems to me that everybody was within their free speech rights unless the threat, the come and find me, is counted as inciting violence in a
Yeah.
court of law as it pertains to the internet, in case law and precedents. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's too tricky for me. My personal opinion is, well, yeah, I mean, free speech is free speech. It only comes down to the actual confrontation, the
Yeah.
actual
So,
violent
so,
act.
so, so we can agree that shooting off your gun in the middle of suburbia, even warning shots are bad ideas, negligent discharge are bad ideas. But to me, um,
So is showing up at somebody's house looking for a
exactly,
fight.
exactly. So my personal belief is violence in all of human history. Violence follows a pattern, right? And that is the violence doesn't start unless somebody starts the violence, right? It's like fire in that way. Human beings have their peacetime mode in their heads, then they have their wartime modes in their heads, and the shift is very this shift is very big, right? There has to be, and so there has to be a very big shift, and so that's what I believe is that the person who starts the violence is the person who is inherently wrong, and that if you provoke and incite violence, not inciting a riot, but if you try to provoke an individual fight, then I believe that that's your free speech. Or, I'm saying that that's the very limits of his free speech, but I still think this is free speech nonetheless, and that Frank Hassel was in the wrong to trespass on his property and not leave immediately when he was asked to, because at the end of the day, they both were trying to provoke a fight. They Frank Hassel didn't go there.
Honestly, I think I'm 100% in agreement with you on
Okay,
this.
cool.
I don't see any place in that description I disagree with at all.
Okay. Let's see. What's our time here for this one? Oh man, we're already at 17 minutes. Um, so yeah, we're on 17 minutes for free speech. Now, um, I'm gonna just call this one. We laid out the foundations for free speech, and I'm gonna stop that one here.